Hello, everybody, and welcome today to our CEMS business project presentation with Concern. This presentation is titled Strategic Look at Concern Worldwide Structure and the Efficiency in Humanitarian Operations. First of all, a quick introduction to who we are. We are CEMS business students in UCD, and we come from all parts of the world. Briefly, my name is Matthew, I'm from Ireland. We have Astrid from Norway, we have Valentin from Germany, Lila from Hungary, and Max from Germany also. We all have unique backgrounds and international experience, and we're able to bring a strong business perspective to this project. Briefly looking at the agenda, first of all, we're going to introduce the project itself. Then we're going to move on into analyzing and enabling operational efficiency in aid delivery. And finally, I'm going to pass you over and we're going to discuss the Concern Way, the organization's business model and moving forwards. This project was split into two sections. This first section was focusing on the operational efficiency in aid delivery. This consisted of conducting an overview, analysis, and evaluation of the key data that was used for the measuring of the cost and efficiencies of the different programs in the different regions and countries. This data was gathered using interviews, surveys, and questionnaires from key partners across the globe. From this data, we were able to come up with some suggestions to enhance the data reporting for higher transparency, clear calls to action, and more precise measuring of efficiency across the board. As well as this, finally, we came up with some proposals of options to implement these suggestions in order to achieve higher efficiency in the country programs, which is the overall goal of what we're doing. We first of all wanted to highlight the importance of using data efficiently and how important it is for this industry and for Concern in particular. Using data in an efficient manner can help make informed decisions. It can improve output measurement and improvement. It can allow you to optimize resource utilization. You can identify cost drivers and savers. It can assist with donor and stakeholder accountability and donor compliance, which is unique for the humanitarian industry. As well as this, it can ensure operational efficiency, which once again is what we are trying to achieve here. I'm now going to pass you on to Max to introduce the second part of this project.
Yes, so the second part of our presentation and the project is about Concern and its business model. And in this part, we have looked at the general business models adapted in the humanitarian sector and then identified some unique processes and characteristics of organizations active in the sector, and then also derived a business model for Concern worldwide, including their unique processes and characteristics. And why this part of the project is important is because we wanted to gain some clarity about the value creation of the organization and how Concern uniquely drives value creation. And this is important for then some insights and discussions about the long-term strategic planning, also in relation to external developments that are influencing the organization.
Okay, I will take over. Thank you, Max. So to come to our first part, analyzing and enabling the operational efficiency in aid delivery, we will start by explaining a bit about the methodology and how we proceeded to the analysis. Then we will explain the key gaps and challenges we could identify. And as a last point, we will present our recommendations and a roadmap to achieve those recommendations. Okay, what we did, we conducted a total of 15 interviews with meetings in key roles within Concern. We gathered a lot of data based on those interviews, over 200 pages, which we then had to analyze. Also, we sent out a questionnaire. So thank you to everybody who responded to this questionnaire. We got 42 responses, and we reached a total of 16 countries and people from all different kind of roles. On the right side here, you can see how we proceeded. So first, through the interviews, through external research, and through the questionnaire, we could gather different information on how the KPIs and the data is currently collected. Then we collected also the views and insights, mainly through the interviews, on how the country's operations are set up. We compiled all those opinions and insights on efficient measurement. And then we started our work, which is really analyzing and trying to identify the gaps in current tracking of efficiency. And now, based on this work, we can finally give some recommendations to address the different gaps and also improve managerial decisions within concern. The only thing that is now missing is the written final report, which we are currently sitting on and which we can also share. To give you a bit of insights here on the bottom left side, this is a part of our questionnaire, one question about the importance of operations data in the different operational departments. And we can really see that all people or most of the people feel that operations data is at least somehow important, if not very important, in their department, especially marking this in HR and security.
As Valentin said, thank you to everyone who responded to the questionnaires and surveys. From these questionnaires, we were able to identify some key gaps across the different operational departments. First of all, in logistics and supply, there are some certain transport and fleet metrics that we identified were missing in terms of vehicle downtime, cost of maintenance of these vehicles, the utilization as well, and the fuel utilization, as well as the sustainability metrics can always be improved across all departments. And something that we'll keep coming back to is the education and training, in this case in the drivers. In terms of the warehouses, you need some more metrics on the slower moving items and percentage of items expiring over the next 90 days. In this case, in human resources, there needs to be more data surrounding the leavers and joiners. This can be carried out through exit interviews. However, we understand that it's difficult to allocate the time and the resources to conduct these interviews and to prioritize this. However, it is a gap that currently exists in that department. In terms of administration, there needs to be more standardized base for legal procedures as well as a clear audit trail. All of this is with the goal of covering up the knowledge gaps that currently exist within that department. In IT, there needs to be more metrics for training. Training is incredibly important in this department, and there needs to be more metrics surrounding that in terms of attendance, in terms of completion, maybe in terms of standardized level having completed the training. And as well as this, there needs to be more information surrounding correct resource utilization. What this would be in reference to is the correct use of internet and hardware during office hours to make sure that all resources used during office hours are being optimized. Within the security department, we were able to identify some clear metrics that there were gaps in. For example, once again, I'm going to mention training. There needs to be more focus on training and how it's completed and how that is spread across the organization. Also within specific incident reporting is a very umbrella term. What we mean is more specific ones. For example, the percentage of incidents that affect concerned staff, the percentage that don't, how they are reported. Are they reported in the correct manner, in the correct time? And this also goes back into the training and how people understand how to do this process. As well as this, there needs to be some kind of metric in terms of the effectiveness of security protocol so that can understand the best practice. And this brings us on to our next point in establishing a clear security tree and a clear management plan, which does include the financial data. If the management plan in general is transparent and can be easily translated to all the participants in the organization, then there'll be more of an understanding on how to report the incidents and how to carry out these security protocols in general. Moving on from the gaps, taking a more external look at the organization, we were able to identify some general operational challenges for the whole organization. We split these up into different sections. First of all, we're going to start off with procedures. With a lack of clear understanding of the operational processes, management plan, and the sheer importance of data usage. So what we mean is that we understand that data is being collected across many departments by many people. However, people are not entirely sure why they're doing it or to what effect and what purpose it has. As well as this, there are many different ways of working across the departments and countries with no standardized, consistent interdepartment communication style. So this can mean that people are coming at it from different angles, from different times, and that can just make the whole process a little bit more difficult. As well as this, there is reliance on manual input throughout the organization, which is time consuming and error prone. Which brings us on to our next point in terms of automation. We are aware that there is a cloud-based ERP system that is still yet to come, which should automate a lot of the processes. However, we cannot fully rely on that. As well as this, there will be some challenges in terms of the implementation and training people so that they're up to the correct standard and know how to use this system. As well as this, challenges in terms of having a real-time overview of stock, fleet, and warehousing is always difficult and challenging in terms of storing the data, in terms of processing the data. Bringing us on to reviewing data. So there is irregular tracking and data-based improvements, which cause some challenges for the organization, as well as this, the security of the digital data, which is a key part of having data. It must be ensured at all times, which brings its own challenges. And mainly for what we're looking at now is ensuring that the data collected is correct and accurate so that it can be used in terms of metrics, in terms of benchmarking. And if it is not correct, then there's no point in having the data at all. Something I've mentioned a couple of times is training and awareness. Lower engagement rate in trainings always causes challenges, which seeps through the organization as a whole. So ensuring that that increases is very important. Sustainability, you can't get around it at all, particularly in this industry with the donors looking. So there's limited tracking and the improvement and sustainability on all levels. This can be and should be brought up. We all understand that. However, there is a difficulty in reporting carbon emissions, and there are also lots of costs associated with it, which causes, of course, major challenges. And finally, in terms of staff competence and opportunities, there are many unfilled positions within Concern, and the recruitment of qualified staff remains and is always a challenge. And as well as this, there seems to be a lack of digital skills that seeps through the organization as a whole. So raising the digital literacy of the organization would be something that has great benefits.
And then based on this, we have made some recommendation that can be made across these 3 pillars that we have found, which is data collection, procedures, and the systems. Because per now, you are gathering a whole lot of data, and this is very good. None of the data that you are gathering is reported as not important. However, there is a lack of analysis of this data, and use this for further benchmark and comparison between countries and in departments. For the procedures, people are reporting that there is a lot of work that is not standardized, and there is a lack of time, accountabilities, and metrics. So here it is important to get standardized procedures that provide clear instructions on why, how, and what is supposed to be done. In regards to the systems, there is a high amount of manual and repetitive work, and it's a lack of staff in different departments, and this can make it hard to collect updated information. An automated system will make it easier to report and will provide more accurate and up-to-date information. The new cloud-based ERP system will hopefully improve the current data collection systems. But before this, it is important to have the standardized and simplified procedures so that people know how to use the systems. Based on this and the gaps that Matthew earlier talked about, we have created a roadmap to efficient data operation, data measurements, and this includes these 6 steps. In regards to clear procedure, the goal here is to increase understanding and consistency in operational processes across all locations. Here it is important to develop a detailed procedure and manuals explaining steps by steps in these processes. In these manuals, you need to have clearly defined roles and responsibilities to ensure that there is accountability in reporting and analysis procedures execution. It's also important to conduct training sessions to ensure that employees understand the important and the effectively use of the procedures. For automation, the goal here is to address the reliance on manual processes and improve the data integration. The implementation of the new ERP system will streamline the data collection and improve the data accuracy. It's also important to integrate an automated tool to lessen the manual data collection and how they put it in, and this will reduce the likelihood of error and will provide updated information. And this automated and standardized reporting across all locations will ensure consistent use and understanding of the data. In regards to data review, the goal here is to have regular data tracking and analysis. Here you need to schedule regular data audits to ensure accuracy and utility, because when you have regular audits, people will do the reporting more correctly each time, because they know that it will come an audit soon. It's also important to have continuous tracking and reviewing to keep the information relevant and up to date. You need to focus on analyzing the collected data and create internal benchmark, for example, improvement across time or between the different locations. In regards to training and awareness, the goal is to make people aware of the importance of the data. So creating a training program focusing on data literacy to make it easier for staff to actually analyze the data and focus on how to use the tools and why they are collecting this information. It's also important to have clearly explaining the roles and the reasoning behind the collection of the data and the reporting requirements. Because when people are connecting to how their roles is used to collect data and make improvements in the organization, this builds a better understanding and a better commitment to actually doing the task. In regards to staffing, the goal here is to have skilled staff have access to the skilled staff that you guys need. And what you need to do there is monitor and track the staff career progress and just encourage and support their career development. You need to continue with the exit interview to understand the staff turnover and provide insight into the reason for why they are leaving. And here you need to focus on the organizational improvement. What are you doing that you now that might be the reason for they are leaving? But it's also important to understand why people are staying in the organization. What is the reason for them to continue to the next process? So there you also need to identify the factors for their own motivation to continue. In regards to sustainability tracking, the goal here is to strengthen the sustainability so the tracking and reporting is in compliance with the new regulation and requirement. What's important here is that you break down the company-wide sustainability goals with clear metrics across each department. These will ensure a throughout and specific reporting, so it's easier to have an updated information. It's also here important to highlight correctly tracking and reporting so that the company is avoiding compliance risk and breaches, and you need to relate this to the new CSRD reporting, so they know that now sustainability tracking and reporting is just as important as the financial reporting.
Thank you, Astrid. So now we've talked a lot about the theory on how data measurement can be improved, what can be improved. But now we wanted to show you an example of how we can really create value on data we gathered. So we gathered the actual data for the 3 different countries, Malawi, Somalia, and Haiti. In all departments, we gathered different data. Here's just a broad overview. And we wanted to highlight some numbers so that you can understand where you could theoretically work on. First of all, in Malawi, we could identify that the number of leavers is very high compared to the staff numbers. So it's also 4 times higher than the leavers in Somalia. And here we can ask, what is the reason for that? Who are the people that are leaving? What can we do to have less staff turnover? So those are some thoughts you could have by comparing those numbers. Another number we figured out is quite outstanding is the procurement time in days. So Haiti has 30 times average procurement time, which is more than double the time that Somalia and 3 times more than in Malawi. Here we can also think what can we do to shorten this time? what is the reason? Are other models, logistic and supply procurement models, more efficient than the one in Haiti? And how can we improve these numbers? A big point that also came out more often, but which we addressed here in admin and security because it was particularly striking, is that some numbers are just not provided. For example, here the security incident and running leases in Somalia. Here we have to do more research on why don't we have the numbers? Do the responsible persons not have access to the numbers? Is the number just not tracked? Is it not reliable? So all the reasons for the gap in information here can be figured out, and then we can do in a second round improvements on this number. And the last number we wanted to highlight is in the finance part. Haiti has a very strong spending on procurement itself, so 50% of the in-country budget. And here we also recommend to do an in-depth analysis to figure out the reason for that, to maybe do cost savings in the end, to adapt to maybe to another procurement way, and overall then concern can save money.
So now we got the second part of the presentation, which is going to be the concerns way of working. So a business model for concern. So first of all, we were looking at from a theoretical perspective for the whole NGO landscape. So we try to understand the definition of NGOs, which is a really hard thing to do because there is like no common definition in the theory about it, but we found some common characteristics which are actually describing an NGO. So first of all, it has to have like a legal entity. It should be an independent civil organization. It should work for a public benefit. It should be unrelated to political power and also a not-for-profit organization. And it's usually relying on an external funding. We try to somehow put concern on a landscape what we actually understood. And we try to see like what kind of organizations are here. So we also found some types of organizations, like for example, PVOs or CSOs. And after that, we try to do an actual landscape. And that is the thing that we see here. So we focused on the types of activities these organizations are doing and also the geographical scope. So we see concern here as an interdisciplinary and international NGO. We also had a look on how the fundings are worldwide gave out for these kind of organizations. And we see that like the United Nations related institutions are getting the most. If we are looking at the business model theory, what we were using for describing concerns way of working, we can see that the business model itself is just the way to show how an organization interacts with its environment. It's a system level holistic approach, which kind of characterizing this organization. And also just to be very plain with it, like it is the way how the organization creates, delivers, and captures value. This is a theory that could be applied also for any kind of organizations. It's not only for for-profit organizations. We chose one tool to describe concerns way of working, which is the business model canvas. And we think it's a really intuitive and easy to understand way to show how an organization working. So here we can see the business model canvas visualized, what we were using as a theoretical background for concerns way of working. In the core, we can see the value capture, the value proposition, which is technically what is the organization's goal. On the left-hand side, we see the value creation process, so how the organization actually creates value through its partnerships, its activities, and resources. On the right-hand side, we can see the value delivery, like how the organization actually delivers value, so for its customer segments and through its channels. And on the bottom side, we can see the financial aspects. So where is the cost and where are the revenues?
Okay, thank you, Lilla. So now we are coming to the business model based on the business model canvas that we have created for concern. And here you can see it already in one picture. And we will just go through some of the details now and explain a bit what our reasoning behind these factors is. And we will start on the very left side in the value creation part that Lila also just explained. And here we have three main stakeholders: the global stakeholders, the key resources, and the local stakeholders. The global stakeholders are stakeholders on the head office level, so to say, which work with concern across multiple countries and more on a strategic note. And there to mention is, of course, the United Nations aid systems, other international NGOs, and multilateral or globally active service providers, for example, logistics service providers. Then the key resources we have identified for concern are one, it's people, two, the tangible assets, of course, like warehouses, IT equipment, and the fleet, and three, the intangible assets, which is also very important to mention, because in the NGO sector, there's a lot of trust, brand, and reliability involved in making connections and actually delivering aid. So that's definitely a key factor as well. And then on the local level or on the country level, we have local stakeholders such as local partners, which are locally active NGOs and organizations that concern actually on grants too. Then we have local authorities and government bodies and other local businesses and stakeholders on a local context that deliver services, for example, for concern. And looking a bit more on the external side, so everything that is influencing the organization from outside, so to say, we have two main things to mention here: the factors and the actors. So factors are all the environmental influences that the organization faces when they are actually delivering aid. So in many countries, you have specific climate-related crises. You have things like droughts or floods happening. So all of this is vastly impacting the aid delivery in the countries. And then you also have actors, which are more human-made influences that affect the aid delivery. And there you have, for example, non-state armed groups that operate in regions where concern is active as well. And you have to deal, or the organization has to deal with these kind of actors as well. And coming to the other part of the value creation side of the business model, we have identified the key activities here and split it again into the head office level and the country level. On the head office level, the key activities that the organization has to perform for value creation is fundraising and administration. And on the country level, the key activities are actually its programs such as emergency, livelihoods, or health and nutrition. And all of these are enabled by the operations that we looked into in our first work stream a bit more. And with these fields in mind, we can then come to the actual value delivery. So on here, we also again split it on head office level and on the country level. And on the head office level, you have certain channels and relationships that you have to foster, for example, to donors and certain levels of, or certain sources of income. You can see here in the chart that the main sources of income for concern are actually government and institutional donors. If you look at it more from individual organizations, also to mention here are the Irish individual donors that also make a large part of the donations to concern. And on the country level, you have also the relationships to mention to the different local stakeholders and the program delivery as itself as a channel to deliver aid. And here to point out is, for example, the program cycle that actually gives a structure to how the organization delivers aid in the country programs. And here we use the UN program cycle to a bit explain how the humanitarian system works on the country level. Yeah, but we won't go into further detail for this. And then for the partnerships and organizational collaboration, it's also very important to mention on the country level that the international system is very well working together with lots of different kinds of stakeholders. So you have coordination on an international level enabled by the United Nations, governments, and the OCA, for example. And then on the country level, you have the humanitarian country teams, the other NGOs, and then the local governments. And in between all of that, you have also the IASC that is also doing a lot of coordination. And with all these stakeholders, Concern has to cooperate as well. And then Concern also has some other relations to, for example, research and development institutions, or other local partners, as we mentioned before. So coming back to the business model here, and now talking about the last part of the value delivery, which is again split into the regional or country level and the head office level. And on the head office level, you actually then deliver value to the donors, because as an aid delivery organization, your main value to the donors is that you are kind of like a vehicle for them to reach people in affected areas or reach affected people, which might be a bit contradictory to actually look at them as someone you deliver value to instead of someone that you can talk about as a partner. And then the value that you generate, or the actual outcome that you generate from this kind of stakeholder group, are the funds, of course, that Concern uses for delivering its value and for funding its operations and activities. And then on the country level, obviously you have the beneficiaries and the program participants that actually benefit from Concern's activities. And what you create here as value is the impact. So to bring people out of poverty, help them in emergency situations.
So here we can see the strengths of Concern, and we really believe that from an organizational part, like the biggest value the organization has, its trust and branding, and its global presence, of course. And obviously, we think that also the diverse funding sources are really, really, really important in the success of the organization. So we really think that the transparency, and the rigor what they are actually having at the ways of operating is really, really valuable. And also on the other side, from the human factors, obviously the people, the experience and expertise, and the mentality and the motivation is actually like one of the biggest things in the life of this organization. So this is technically the heart of the whole thing. And here we identified some weaknesses from our business model of the organization. So first of all, which is actually quite not really a unique problem to Concern, but also like in multiple NGOs, it's the resource constraints and also the dependency on donor funding. But also when we were doing the interviews and questionnaires, it came out that so many people are actually requiring a little bit more being data-driven or more digitalized as an organization. And also from the human side, we've seen some problems regarding staffing, the high turnovers or staffing gaps. And also it's a really, really complex organization. So obviously there are like inefficiencies that are coming through.
Yes. So we have looked at the strengths and weaknesses of the organization, and now we will want to look at the threats and challenges that the organization faces. And actually, we have mapped it against some opportunities that we have identified where Concern could actually discuss and develop in the future. So split into two parts here, external threats and internal challenges. We have a large list identified, for example, political challenges and shifting priorities. You have increased competition for funding, or also regulatory challenges and growing safety issues in some of the regions. One thing to point out here, for example, is the global funding levels and even more complex and protected crises. And as a deep dive to this, you can, for example, look at the global humanitarian aid funding volume and the actual UN aid appeals that are growing almost every year since the last 8 years. And you can also see that the gap between what is actually spent globally on humanitarian aid and what the UN thinks is needed every year is growing significantly, from just a few percent in the 2016 and 18 to almost 50% last year. And what you can also see is that much of the global aid funding volume is coming from only a few countries, which are mainly the US and the European countries. Coming back to this, what an opportunity here, for example, could be to look into new sources of funding, also different countries. And then talking about the internal challenges, we have, for example, always the danger of the loss of brand and trust in the organization. You have a brand that has to be used dually for actually fundraising, but also for its operation activities. And you have a lot of pressure on increasing transparency and accountability as an international NGO. You have, as Matthew also mentioned before, staff literacy or digital literacy of staff, general staffing issues, and then implementation of new technologies. And you have a growing number of a larger number of local stakeholders that you have to work with and that you have to coordinate. And for all these, we have come up with three main pillars of opportunities that Concern could consider in the future. The first one being new sources of funding, as I just said, and non-traditional sources. The second, the implementation of new technologies in the organization. And the third, the localization, actually new partners and new ways of collaboration. So a bit more details about the new sources of funding and some routes to consider here. For example, alternative donor countries. As we have seen, most of the funding is coming from European nations and the United States. And maybe the organization could consider what alternative donor countries are there. I mean, Concern is already active in South Korea, but yeah, I mean, it's politically challenging, but also looking at countries such as Middle Eastern nations, which are quite wealthy, could be a discussion topic. Then corporate NGO partnerships. We have seen this in other NGOs already. Some do it more frequently. So what you could think about here is actually partnering up with some corporates that, for example, for product development, or for example, tapping into consumer brands and get a share of the consumer spending for their products that can be donated directly to Concern, also to increase the brand value of the corporate partner. Also, always to consider risk here is, of course, the image and brand of Concern itself, if it partners up with a corporate. Then another thing to consider are social enterprises and additional revenue streams. So what Concern could think about is actually how to monetize some of its knowledge, some of its expertise, and some of its assets, and actually build up a kind of social enterprise that generates profit that can be used for funding its operations and activities. And then also a fourth point here is new fundraising challenges, where you can look at actually how you enable platforms and social media to make donating to Concern even more easy and seamless, or actually also reach a new generation or the younger generations once they step into their early careers and have some more disposable income. This could be another source of income. And in the second pillar here, we're looking at the implementation of new technologies. One important thing here to mention, as these days everyone mentions, is of course the use of AI and ML, and how this can actually improve, as we talked about earlier, as well, the data collection and analysis, and also automate some of the stuff that are currently done manually. Of course, again, what you have to consider here is the cost, but also the staff and how they can actually work with these models. And then what the second point here is the partnerships. So one opportunity could be to partner up with companies like Microsoft, for example, to work with them together on implementing such solutions, and also increase or improve the brand image of Microsoft in the same way, and actually maybe get easier access to their products at a lower cost level. And then other things are, for example, digital identities and biometrics that can be used for delivering aid and avoid any spillage of money here, or IoT sensors, for example, installing them in warehouses to automatically track inventories or warehouse conditions. And then many other points, like also smarter infrastructure or the cash transfer programs that are already used in some of the countries that Concern is active in, are just further points to consider. And then on the third pillar, the localization, we We already know that Concern is active in this and also already explores some ways of localization. And that's, I think, an avenue that should be further considered. But also further points in this are to actually engage more with the local private sector and make use of local businesses instead of more globally active service providers. And then also work with the civil society a bit more, work with the communities. I mean, Concern already does this in some parts, but this is definitely an avenue that can help the organization further. And then look at also new financing models on the country level, for example. So we hope you enjoyed our presentation today and could actually learn or get new ways of thinking at how to look at the operational efficiency and data tracking and also the Concern business model. We would like to thank all of you very much for sharing your insights and giving us your valuable inputs and time over the course of the project. We really much enjoyed looking at Concern and working with all of you. And we hope we actually created some lasting impact, hopefully. Yeah, also special thanks to Nelly, who supported us throughout the whole process. We hope to see or meet some of you in the future, maybe again. Thank you very much.